Welcome to Daily Office Devotions. I'm Reggie Kidd, Dean of the Cathedral Church of St. Luke in Orlando, Florida. If you're enjoying this podcast, don't forget to like and subscribe. I'm glad to be with you on this Friday of the 7th week of Easter. Follow me. Matthew chapter 9, verse 9. Jesus commands and Matthew simply obeys. Why does Matthew follow him? Our passage provides but an indirect hint. Matthew is a tax collector. He is therefore reckoned among the sinners by the righteous. Matthew 9, verse 11. Matthew is among those who recognize they are sick and in need of a physician. Matthew chapter 9, verses 12 and 13. That they are worn out by life and need to be made new. Matthew 9, verses 14 through 17. What makes me follow Jesus? I see some of myself in Matthew. In addition, our readings today give me ample reason to follow. Because he is God. Hebrews chapter 1, verses 10 through 12 is a direct quote of Psalm 102, 25 through 27 from today's psalm. But today you are the same, and your years will never end. In Psalm 102, these verses anchor the psalmist's hope in the day of my trouble. See verse 1. His troubles come from enemies, verse 8. From his recognition of God's indignation at his sin, verse 10. From his feeling of homelessness, verse 17. And from a creeping fear of death, verses 11 and 24. With verses 25 through 27, the psalmist places his destiny in the hands of the Lord who is eternal. The fascinating thing is that in Hebrews, these verses conclude the writer's argument that Jesus is God. Psalm 102 affirms the eternality and the deity of Jesus Christ, says the writer to the Hebrews. And whether Matthew the tax collector realized it in that moment when Jesus told him, "Follow me," or whether it dawned on him over time, he came to see it as well. Matthew's gospel is the one that tells us that Jesus' name means Emmanuel, God with us. So with Matthew, I follow Jesus because he is God. Because he makes sin go away. Jeremiah speaks of a new covenant that's not like the old covenant. The old covenant announced on Mount Sinai and engraved on tablets of stone did more to convict people of their sin than it did to mold them into the kingdom of priests they were called to be. The old covenant relied on sacrifice after sacrifice to provide covering for sin after sin. Jeremiah looks to a new covenant that brings the law's work into the human heart, where it can produce transformation, not just demand it. The promise of that new covenant is one single sacrifice that finally cleanses consciences once and for all. That sacrifice, in addition, gives God a sort of holy amnesia. I will forgive their iniquity and remember their sin no more, Jeremiah chapter 31, verse 34, and Hebrews chapter 8, verse 12. Did Matthew catch a glimpse of that hope when Jesus told him, "Follow me"? Who knows? But by the time he wrote his gospel, he definitely did. Of the three gospel accounts of the institution of the Lord's Supper, it is Matthew's alone that echoes the amazing scene in Exodus chapter 24, when the elders saw Moses take blood from the sacrificed oxen, dash it on the people, and say, "See the blood of the covenant which the Lord has made with you." Exodus chapter 24, verse 8. Matthew alone recalls Jesus speaking of the sacrifice he was about to make as "my blood of the covenant." Matthew chapter 26, verse 28. As the writer to the Hebrews makes clear, the one last sacrifice to end all sacrifice, by clearing all sin and covering all transgression once and for all. For by a single offering he has perfected for all time those who are sanctified. Hebrews chapter 10, verse 14, and see the whole context. So, with Matthew, I follow Jesus because he has dealt with sin and my sin for good. because he breathes life into the deadness of my being. But be filled with the Spirit, says the Apostle Paul in Ephesians chapter 5, verse 18. Sin taken care of, transformation can take place. Transformation occurs when the Spirit who raised him from the dead and who now resides in us breathes fresh life into us. The breath of the Spirit draws us out of the walking sleep death of fornication, impurity, greed, which is idolatry, and into the robustness of wise living, thanksgiving, praise, and above all, love. How ironic that this new life is the opposite of pursuits that people undertake in the name of freedom, fulfillment, and fun. The Bible characterizes those pursuits as representing a coma of sorts, an internal deadness, a lack of awareness of being truly and vibrantly alive, of being incapable of understanding the authentic nature of love. Christ lives in us now. He's writing God's law in our hearts by the Spirit. He ushers us from the darkness of spiritual stupor and into the light of full awakening. Sleeper, arise. Sleeper, awake. Rise from the dead, and Christ will shine on you. Ephesians chapter 5, verse 14. Perhaps Matthew did, or perhaps he didn't immediately sense the newness of life offered in Jesus' follow me. But at some point he did come to understand, because he wrote about it, that Jesus was refashioning him into a new wineskin so that he could be a vessel of the new wine of new life. Matthew chapter 9, verse 17. So I follow Jesus because with Matthew, I choose newness over senescence. I choose life over death. I choose being awake over being in perpetual torpor. I choose the breath of the Spirit over the sour aftertaste of mere amusement. May you this day follow Jesus, and in following him, may you know his divine protection. May you revel in the forgiveness he has won for you, and may you breathe in the fresh wind of his Spirit. Be blessed this day.